welcome back to another video. My name is Max and today we're doing another draw with me video, but it's also kind of like talking about my planning process. It's a bit of a tutorial about how to plan your art. You know, I've been doing more artful art recently, and in next week's video I'm going to be doing the surrealism transformation thing of this picture here of Jake, and today I'm going to be planning that and talking you through the process of planning. And you can apply this to any kind of art medium like sculpture, drawing, I don't know, the other ones. Anyway, I hope you found the video educational. I will hand you over to me.
Alright, straight off the bat, I'm just going to apologise for all of the disgusting, atrocious, awful filming that is going to happen in this video. I don't know what is wrong with my camera arm, but I've been saying for several videos now that it keeps like moving the camera around where I don't want it and getting like weird angles that look stupid. So now I've told you, we can actually start talking about what we need to. So this first step is going to kind of depend on the sketchbook size that you're using. If you're doing it on like plain paper, I'd suggest like A3 because that's the size of a A4 sketchbook spread. And you want to, if you're using A4, you want to get an A5 piece of paper and like draw around it. Make sure you've got an empty space somewhere on your page that's A5 sized, because that's where you're going to be doing your sort of practice final piece sort of thing. I didn't do that until I'd finished this next step, but you know, just do it first because it's wise. And if you're using a A5 sketchbook, then I'd recommend just doing it on the next page instead of trying to do a teeny tiny one somewhere on the original spread. After you've done that, you want to do what I'm doing now and take your reference image and just draw it 3 times. If you don't have a reference image planned, like if you just want to do something from your head, I'd recommend like searching through Pinterest or Google, although Google's a bit crap, but you know, finding a couple images that are kind of similar to what you want to do and just copying those, even if they're not exactly what you want, because you want to get your hand used to the shape language and the kind of like muscle memory in your hand, the kind of things that you want to draw, because then it will just end up looking way better because you've practiced it a bunch of times. But the way I do this is I like to do a small one, a medium one, and then a large one, and supposedly they're meant to get better as you go along. I'm under the impression that my first one was the best one, which is kind of unfortunate. The second one was very whack. I think you saw all of the sort of weird things I was having to do with his jaw. I had to get some Tipp-Ex out, which isn't, like, don't do that unless you absolutely have to, because it looks really stupid. The last one wasn't too bad either, but you know. While you're doing this, you can like jot down some ideas of other things you might want to include in the final piece, like around the spaces, around like the heads or whatever it is that you're doing. I'm doing that here. Just like a couple notes about what you want to include, maybe what color scheme, what kind of composition, anything that comes into your head while you're practicing. And then you want to do so this might not apply depending on what you're doing, but you want to draw your reference image, but with the adaptations either that you've just noted down or that you just know that you want to do. So I knew I wanted him to be a kind of underwater demon creature, so I made him look like one. Now, if you're doing just like a sort of non-weird thing, you just want to draw, say, a tiger, this probably isn't going to work doing this step because it'll probably just look the same as the first couple. In that instance, I'd suggest in the first 3 practicing different sort of facial expressions or compositions or kind of body language. And then in the 4th one, just do what you've decided out of those that you definitely want to do. If you're drawing like a building or something that doesn't have facial expressions or body language, then maybe just experiment with colors a bit, like paint, just draw the same thing 3 times and then paint or color them in different colors. And then in the final one, you do like a neat copy where you like try a little bit harder. I definitely tried a little bit harder in this one. As you can see, I did a pencil sketch underneath first, whereas I didn't with the first 3. This definitely, out of the 4, is obviously my favorite. It's way better. And then I added little like kelpie things behind him, just cause. Now, At this point, you want to look back to the things that you jotted down in the first step, and I'm going to apologize, you're going to see my legs because my camera decided that you wanted to see my legs. You draw like different bits of the things that you wrote down. So say I wrote down I wanted him to have siren ears, you do a siren ear. And the tentacles, and just anything you wrote down, anything that you want to include in the final piece, just draw it or paint it or whatever. I did the sketches off camera because you already saw me do the sketch with the first one, and it would just like make the video needlessly long. I'd recommend for at least some of these using your medium of choice for the final piece to colour them in, because it's getting you used to using the colours and the textures that you're going to have available for the final piece. So if you're doing yours in like Biro, then ignore me because you just keep doing what you're doing. But I used watercolours because that's my medium of choice, and I thought it was a good idea to use the manky, chalky, like blocky watercolours instead of the nice tubey ones, because it's the plan. I don't want to waste my nice paint, but then it ended up looking stupid. But, you know, it's fine, it doesn't... It's a plan. Like, don't get too hung up about everything looking absolutely perfect because it's a plan. This is you practicing for the final thing, and you need to make mistakes now so that you don't make them later and you can learn from them. I made some mistakes in that I automatically painted the tentacle orange when I wanted like cold colors, and orange is a very warm color. So I tried to correct it by like going over it with some blue, but then it just looked brown. In the in the picture there of him holding his torso open, the tentacles are blue, and I wanted them to be blue. They ended up being blue in the final thing, so it's fine. I also thought that in the one I'm working on now with the torso, it was kind of not very clear what was actually going on in there. It was supposed to look like tentacles were coming around through his ribcage and out of his chest. Which is a bit grim, but like there's no organs or anything. He's not being disemboweled, so like calm down. But it's not very clear. Like it just looks like a sort of painty mess, and you can't actually tell what's going on. I've just convinced myself that it's because it's small, and when I do it in the final like A2 copy, it's gonna look fine. Is it A2 or is it A3? I can't remember what size my watercolor paper is. Anyway, in the big one, it'll look better, is what I've told myself, and if it doesn't, then I'll just have to cry about it. As you're drawing or painting or whatever, just like brainstorm names a bit of what you might want to call your piece. If you're not into naming your art, then like don't, that's fine. And if you're working in sculpture for your final one, then these last couple steps are probably going to be not very easy. Like, for the first three, I would just recommend doing copies of similar sculptures, similar like artists that do that sort of thing. And then the final, the fourth copy would be of your own idea, maybe incorporating some of those. And then for the ones I've done in watercolor here, maybe you want to draw it from different angles, practice using different colors, and just experiment a bit with other like ideas and techniques you might want to use. It will be a little bit harder to use this method of planning for like a 3D piece, but like I think you can make it work. Obviously, this isn't like the only way you can do planning. This is just how I do planning, and I'm not like the master of planning who invented planning. So don't come at me if this doesn't work for you, okay? This is just some ideas to help you get started. The two paintings I've done just here are, of course, his ear and his eye. I wanted it to look like his eye was kind of glowing, so I tried to use darker shades around the edge. I don't know if that worked. I tried. His eyelashes looked kind of whack. I always struggle with eyelashes on boys because they always end up looking really feminine. And it's like, boys have eyelashes too, though. Like, what am I supposed to do? Make them bald? Anyway, here I'm starting the kind of final piece, and this is kind of the pinnacle of poor filming at this point because the sun was too bright. The shadow is kind of ruining it, it's flickering, and the camera is not even pointing at the right part. But luckily, I do decide to switch ends of the table because you can't even see when I'm working on the bottom half of the painting. But overall, I worked kind of faster than I normally do. I normally spend like 4 hours on the practice final one. I mean, it takes me 8 hours to do the final one, so that's not that surprising. But this one only took me like 1.5 hours. I was kind of, I don't want to say I was rushing it, I was just being less precious about it, because like I knew what I wanted to do, and I was just practicing. Like, that's the point, it's a practice. I'm not coming up with new ideas at this point, I'm just seeing what works and what doesn't. And something I found didn't work was the composition. Like, everything else was fine, but I needed to zoom in a bit more and not have it cut off at as soon as his hips start, and not have like his tail showing. Because like okay, lots of reason. Partly because they're meant to be kind of headshots. It was the original intention, but I wanted something more than, oh look, he's a mermaid boy. I wanted something that's not been done before. So I had to include his torso so that the tentacles could be erupting from him. So I'm just gonna zoom it in a bit more so that all you see is him and some kelp behind him. You don't need to see like the entire ocean that he lives in. Also, I'm not completely sure about him having a tail. Like, originally I was thinking, well, he can just be like a person with legs, and he can have like webbed feet with like talons on or something, which obviously you wouldn't see. But because I made him this zoomed out, I kind of had to give him a tail, otherwise you'd see his naked legs and what's between his legs, which I don't want to get demonetized. So, I mean, not that I am monetized, I don't get paid for this. But I had to give him a tail so that you didn't see anything that you're not supposed to. In the original idea, he doesn't have a tail, so I'm probably just gonna cut it off and then not give him a tail in the final thing. Also, in both the painting of just his torso and this one, his hands look really whack. That they just look like blobs that have not even fingers. Like, the fingers look so swollen, and they don't even look like they're holding on to his peeling skin. They just look like they're just sort of there. I'm not so sure what to do about that. One of my like pre-practice pieces probably should have been of just his hands. I might do like a separate one on a separate spread somewhere, because I don't want them looking like that on the final thing. But you know, I tried, kind of. Also, I forgot to add the scales on his skin. For this one, I just forgot, it slipped my mind, but that is something that I am intending on doing in the final piece. And we are coming up to the end now. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like and subscribe if you did. Here is the finished piece. I hope that you found this an educational experience. I hope you now are better educated about how to plan your stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. Make sure you check it out, because it will be the one where I do the final piece. Bye!